This is the Peaceful Revolutionary coming at you again for another blog. Today I want to talk about Mars, Voyage to Mars. It's since the movie The Martian came out, there's been a lot of buzz, and I've been following this, the science of going to Mars and back, colonizing Mars since I'm a teen, so quite a while ago, 25 years ago or so. And I think my first exposure was just reading NASA's plans at the time about terraforming, colonization, all this stuff. They were just kind of talking about it and kind of planning roughly how they would do it at the time. And there was also some interesting movies about Mars, Martians. You know, you've been around for science fiction, kind of talking about how cool it would be. And there's some excellent books. I forget the author, but I remember reading a lot about it. The books were called, Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars. There were science fiction books. They were in great detail detailing how the first humans would arrive, grow into a colony, and get a Martian society kind of going from these initial colonists and so on and so forth. And that was great entertainment. That was awesome. And over the years, I've come to think about Mars as a really great experience in human discovery and human society, because you're going to a different world. It takes currently it takes about 6 months to get there. So once you go there, it's not easy to come back. It takes lots of resources to actually get there. I mean, currently the NASA's project are talking about the cost of about $40 to $50 billion to bring a small amount of people, maybe a dozen, over to Mars. Very costly, and once you're there, coming back is, the same amount of time coming back. You don't have a lot of problems breaking through the atmosphere of Mars, because Mars' atmosphere is pretty breaking out of the atmosphere. Mars' atmosphere is very thin; it's about 1,000 times thinner than Earth, so minimal friction, no problem. Mars' gravity is 38% that of Earth, so a lot less fuel is needed, but still you need all this fuel to break the gravity and through the atmosphere and all this stuff to come back. And you're not necessarily carrying all the comeback, the gasoline or no, the fuel that you need with you to get back from Earth, because you unless you manufacture the fuel on Mars over your trip, which is what they have planned, because that's logical. Anyhow, it's a little bit of an issue, and most of the Mars missions that are currently being planned legitimately, like you have NASA that wants to send not colonists in there, but send expeditions there, manned expeditions by 2025, I believe, or 2030. We have the SpaceX, like Elon Musk's, the billionaire's plans to actually colonize. He wants to have an initial colony there by 2035 or so. And his purpose for it is he wants a copy of Earth. In case something happens to Earth, there's going to be another copy there to maintain our society, culture, genetic makeup, and all that stuff to have it basically like a copy of a hard drive kind of analogy over there. And there's also the Mars One, which is a not-for-profit organization that I've been following for the last few years. They've been doing a lot of not-for-profit stuff, like initiatives. They're through a selection process for astronauts right now. They keep raising funds to get a similar to NASA kind of a thing going, actually more similar to SpaceX with Elon Musk. They want to colonize, so they send I think it's 8 people for men, for women, to Mars for permanent stay, and then send more people every year. And these people essentially would become Martians and have children there and all that stuff. That's as a not-for-profit, international. You can check it out. I'm sending up links, of course, in the down below about it. So there's a lot of interest from different individuals about these very costly projects to go to Mars and live there or study or like get some insights about what it is to live on another planet. It's really exciting. I love the idea. I even like when Mars One started promoting, I even applied in the first round to become one of the astronauts, and then I didn't proceed with the process because I thought I got a huge amount of things I want to do here that are really important to me. And if I go to Mars, I mean, you're really a pioneer with minimal contact, and you're not impacting what's going on here on Earth. You're really building a new society over there, and that's not really what I have in mind for myself, or at least for the next few years. So I decided, well, let's stop that process, and we'll go over there and visit at another time. So anyway, so what's the big deal about going to Mars aside from making a copy of Earth there to kind of preserve in case a catastrophe happens on Earth? Like, why would people go there? Uh, I mean, the adventure, perhaps the science, like that's what attracts me, like adventure and the science. And can you imagine that you're a completely new planet, you have to start it all over, and there's lots of danger. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's exciting, but you got to be aware of all the radiation, like the solar and cosmic radiations, for example, are can be extremely troublesome and deadly. We're on Earth. We're protected by the magnetosphere, which diverts all these harmful particles away from the Earth and us. Naturally, we're not even aware. We don't need to do anything; it just does it. We have to put a little bit of UV cream, I guess the UV radiation, some other radiations from the cosmos that does kind of penetrate through in summer. That's about it. But there's a lot more harmful radiations that actually need to be considered. Temperatures on Mars, not too bad. Low temperature minus 125, high temperature near the equator, maximum about 20 degrees Celsius. So if you live on the equator, in summer it ain't bad. I mean, you're okay. In winter, well, it can get, the average temperature is minus 60 on the whole planet. On the equator, is probably a lot harder than that. So it's tolerable with the proper clothing. The issue is the atmosphere. You can't just go out and breathe. I mean, the atmosphere is mostly, like predominantly, over 95% of the atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide, and it's like super thin. Like I said before, it's 1,000 times thinner than the Earth's atmosphere, not breathable, and it's a void. So you do have to wear like a space suit to avoid and pressurized to so that it keeps your innards in because it's an extremely low pressure outside, like a vacuum almost. Well, not quite a vacuum, but it's really low pressure. It's a deadly low pressure. And if you could sustain the pressure, you can't breathe all this carbon dioxide, which is, even though it's 95% of the atmosphere, because it's so thin, it's not a lot of carbon dioxide. There's just no oxygen. That's the problem. Earth's atmosphere is 21% oxygen, about 79% nitrogen, and there is like somewhere in there like 0.5% variation that it contains carbon dioxide and some noble gases and some other and water vapor and these things. That's Earth's atmosphere. So we have lots of oxygen here and enough pressure to sustain life and sustain us. On Mars, not so. Now the other issue is, well, you got to eat when you're there. You got your suit, you got your radiation protection, which is just coverings, and you got to create your own protection against radiation from everywhere. So you're okay about the atmosphere. Temperature is fine, and you can walk around, you can kind of live, but you still have to drink, and you still have to eat, and you have to sustain yourself. And that means you have to have greenery, and you can't just plant on Martial soil. I'm showing you a composition of the Martial soil. It's not like right now, from the different rovers and whatnot that came and did some sampling, and it's not super different from the Earth soil. If you look at the composition, it's a lot of metal oxides, various metal oxides, and other elements from the periodic table. Pretty somewhat similar to Earth. I mean, there are some differences, and I didn't pull out the composition from Earth, but from where I'm looking here, you got a lot of sodium oxide, magnesium, aluminum oxide, which is also found, has significant amount on the Earth's crust as well. Silicon oxide, that's one of the major elements of our soil here. Sulfur oxide, sulfur is no, it's okay. Calcium oxide, and a fairly amount of it. A little bit of iron oxide. I mean, these are all minerals that we need for life, that we need to, plants need to grow and things like that. And oxides also mean we can extract oxygen. So we can manufacture our oxygen for the people that are on Mars using the soil. With pretty simple catalytic or chemical processes, you can get O2, encapsulate that, and put that into the habitats, kind of process your own O2 from the soil itself. And potentially down the line, if you want to terraform Mars, as in like greening it up a little bit like the Earth, building an atmosphere with sufficient pressure so that you don't need the suit and all that stuff, which would also change the weather, increase the weather, and stabilize it. We can actually do that, like generate a new atmosphere through the use of the soil to extract the oxygen and other chemicals that are needed to create a Earth-like atmosphere. And NASA has elaborated a lot of plans about that years and years ago. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Now the issue, like initially for growing plants, is that you can take the Martian soil, but you do need some organic material to kick it off. And for those of you who saw The Martian last year, what he did, like, to survive over there on Mars, because he's stranded there and he needs to survive for another like 3 years or whatnot, above his mission parameters. He used feces, which contains a lot of biological matter, essentially like fertilizer, quote unquote. And he put that in the soil to allow potato plants in his case, to grow with water. So organic matter is important for growth. It's a catch-22. I mean, you can't just put something in like raw soil that has no organic matter, and add oil and put a seed in and hope it's going to grow. I mean, just from the water, the seed has a certain amount of organic matter to pull from, to start to germinate and actually grow to a certain stage. But it requires more than that. It requires a symbiotic relationship with the earth to actually be healthy and get to adulthood and get something going like fruit. And without the organic matter, you can't really get there. And on Mars, so you need to bring bacteria and all this stuff. So that's not a big deal, but you still have to consider that. Now H2O, water. We need lots of water for all sorts of stuff. The plants needs a lot of water. There is no water directly on the top of the soil. There is speculation still. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed. I've been trying to search for it a little bit. There's a strong indications that there may be water ice underneath the soil or within the soil near the equator on Mars. So if we can identify that and melt that ice, then we got a direct water source that's not too hard to extract. Otherwise, we need to, again, from the soil composition, somehow get H2O. Now, looking at the soil composition from my chart from earlier, this is all oxides. We need H2O. So we need oxygen, that's great, but we also need hydrogen. And there's not, I mean, the minerals that were taken from Curiosity, Spirit, and Opportunity, they don't contain any elements that has hydrogen. And the air, I mean, it's mostly CO2, again, not hydrogen. Fortunately, so it's not like hugely accessible, like directly in the like in the soil and all that stuff. But hydrogen is everywhere in the cosmos. So there's a way to get hydrogen as well, because it's the most abundant atom. So there's a portion of the atmosphere that has a little bit of hydrogen in it. Because it has an amount of water, for example, so you can extract a little bit of water from the atmosphere. That's not really a good way to go on Mars there, because the atmosphere is so thin. But there's other source of hydrogen, probably like in other layers of the soil that is not top. layers, because that's what curiosity actually gathers, is from the top. There's more than likely there's quite a significant amount of hydrogen a little bit deeper into the soil in some of those compounds. So you can create your own H2O, or you heat up the ice that you find and to get H2O. So most of it. So instead of a auto-sufficient system like we have on Earth, where we can find the water in the streams, and the air has lots of chemicals in it, it's dense enough, you can just like produce different things really easily. On Mars, you have to create all these mechanisms, because none of it is naturally occurring in the state that we wanted. We have to have industry, essentially, or small industries, to actually generate all these elements. But it's not too far off. I mean, the chemical reactions needed to take like the soil, or to dig, or these things, is not too difficult. Creating fuel from the soil elements, since we know the composition, not that big of a deal, especially since going from Mars to Earth requires way less fuel than the other way around. And part of the plans for NASA, at least, is to have these manufacturing plants that kind of automatically take soil samples, take the soil and generates fuel for trips back. So it would generate all that you need to put into the rocket there. The atmosphere is and the gravity is low enough that it requires maybe a third of what would require on Earth to actually get out of Earth orbit. So entirely doable. The problem where people are really careful and sending things and testing everything is that it's 6 months away. It's people are really concerned if they go to the North Pole, because then you're maybe 18 hours away from help if something happens. Well, on Mars, if something happens, you're 6 months away from any sort of help, and that assumes that there's a crew already ready and a rocket ready for you to that's ready to take off to bring you help, whether it's robotic or a man crew has to be prepared. So I mean, tick the clock. I mean, something happens. 6 months is for the trip, but then you may have like 6 months to a year of prep time before they even leave. So once you're there on Mars, you're on your own. Basically, that's what it means. You're on your own. If some of the machinery breaks, and your duplicate machinery breaks, all of a sudden you're out of water, or you're out of something really critical to life, to survival over there. So really dangerous. So all this prep time is kind of important, right? So I love this stuff. It's really great. I would go if it would be easy to do the transit here and back. So, and that will happen in the future. So that's my reason to go. It's like more of an explorer and a scientist. I'm curious, and I'm not afraid of risk. But why would us as humanity or go there, aside from the duplication aspect? I mean, do we want to do a little bit like science fiction novels mention? We become a little bit of a parasite of solar systems and galaxy. We kind of colonize everything. We grow. We don't really solve our problems. We just solve them by extending it to other planets and trying to fix it. And that's a little bit of a concern to me. It's like on Earth we have a shitload of issues that we need to resolve. And if we go to Mars or another planet too early, we're just bringing our problems there. I totally agree with a duplication of life, like to have a copy on Mars. That's great. It's in the same solar system. We're not bringing our problems to other solar systems, so to speak. And it's kind of protective, and like we're bound to actually do it just because we're so damn curious and we want the adventure. That's okay. But before we go like farther and too far into this process of colonizing other planets and going out there. I mean, we should really focus on fixing our issues here and stabilizing a society. Like, there shouldn't be any wars. We shouldn't have any more conflicts. There shouldn't be anybody that has no food. Like, why would we send somebody to Mars or start a colony on Mars when we can't even feed the people here where all the resources are readily available? So those are all questions I do ask myself. So yeah, go ahead. Let's make the copy. Let's be curious. Let's get the adventure done. But before we go beyond that, well, why don't we solve the issues here so that those issues don't appear in the colony and the new habitat that we're preparing for ourselves, right? So this is like my like candid thoughts on it. And a question to you guys as peaceful revolutionaries, like, obviously some of you would definitely go because we think outside the box, and we want things that are different. We like adventure. How many of you would go? And I'm interested in knowing your ideas on the subject and whether or not you would actually go. For what reason? Like, what personal reasons would you go to Mars to live as a colonist? I really would like to know what you guys think. For me, it's more of a scientific exploration that is very personal to me. And like, whenever I play games, I play a lot of games, I like to build things from scratch. I like to start over. So doing something on Mars is like that. It's like my very personal survival game, right? You go there, minimal resources, and you build a society, and that's super exciting to me. These are my personal motivations. It's completely selfish in many ways. Of course, I would share, maybe like using YouTube or whatever, share my experiences with the rest of the world, and doing that stuff so that people that don't want to go get to experience it in a certain way. But I'm sure other people like in the channel or anywhere would have other types of motivations to go, and perhaps other concerns. And lastly, one last little thing I'd like to mention, that I strongly, like most of you know, I strongly believe that there's extraterrestrial life. Not only that, but that extraterrestrial lives are responsible for our creation through scientific means on the planet. So they're out there and they're watching, and they're not really coming officially to our planet because they think that currently we're idiots and dangerous. But if we go to another planet like that, higher chances of sightings and visitations, I think, since like on planet Mars, it's fairly unlikely that we'll have missiles that try to protect the planet and the colony against alien invasion. I sure hope not. So, I mean, there's a higher chance if you go to Mars that you're going to have like, hey, okay, this is a new society. You're starting something new. People are smart, sharp, open-minded, adventurous. Let's go check them out and have a first contact there. I think I like that idea, and just handshake with them and say, hey, okay, like when your progenitors on planet Earth are ready, and we're going to go visit them there. In the meantime, just relay our message, kind of deal. That would be really cool. But anyway, that's just me. Anyhow, so I'm going to end the video here. I'm eagerly awaiting some of the comments on this. And also, if you can comment on terraforming Mars and the impact of that. That's another complete different topic. That's in fact, that's a project for generations, actually greening the red planet, so to speak, and making it a little bit more similar to Earth, and without all the constant dangers that we would currently face if we go, when we go, actually, in 10, 15, 20 years from now. So anyhow, have a nice time. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that gives you insights. Check out the links below to get more information on Mars and compositions and all these expeditions. And I'm waiting for your comments. Have a good time. Ciao.